Good afternoon. My name is John Keenan, and I'm one of your fellow classmates in Intro to Interpretation. Today, I'd like to take a few minutes to talk to you about artificial intelligence. When I first started thinking about this program, I really didn't have any concept of how artificial intelligence would or could impact the future of the profession. But this has been a lifelong dream of mine, so I decided to pursue it. And now that we're starting to talk about it, I wanted to have a pretty good idea of how it could impact it. So I started out to assess some translation capabilities of artificial intelligence back in April. My initial project was to translate a Chinese Mandarin manuscript from Mandarin into English. And I set out to do it and test doing it using 3 tools. First, ChatGPT. Second, Apple Artificial Intelligence. And third, DeepSeek. They all had strengths and weaknesses, and to explore those a little bit more, I'd like to talk about how I set the project up to begin with. As I said, I had a Chinese manuscript. What I had was 130 pages of original typed out Chinese manuscript, not photos, not digitized in any way. And my first step was to take these original prints and digitize them by taking photos of them with an Apple iPhone. And the reasons for that will become clear later. Once I had that, I converted the whole thing into a word processing manuscript. And once I had that, then I was able to play around with that word processing manuscript in ChatGPT or any other tool. So first, I took that manuscript to ChatGPT and I uploaded the whole thing. And ChatGPT did what it does best, and it took the whole thing and it analyzed it, and it came up with what amounts to a truncated version of the entire manuscript. It shortened in places it shouldn't have. It added elements of the story it shouldn't have, and the result was something that didn't have any real resemblance to the original manuscript, although it was entertaining. The second choice was Apple Artificial Intelligence. And when I tested Apple Artificial Intelligence, what I was hoping to do was actually take the pictures that I'd already taken directly into translation using a cut and paste feature in the Apple Photos app. I was able to put the text directly into the word processing version of the manuscript in Chinese, and then I was able to flip the orientation of that script so that it matched the original Chinese as closely as possible. But when I translated this using the Apple Artificial Intelligence tools, what ended up happening was that the translation was way too literal, and it missed a lot of the nuance that in idiomatic English that a native speaker would have managed to capture much better. So the final choice was DeepSeek, and DeepSeek was a natural choice because at the time that we started the project, and when I say we, I mean me and my Mandarin proofreader, when we started this project, DeepSeek was getting a bunch of press because it was new, because it was technologically new and different from ChatGPT, and because it was the new thing in China. And so it made sense for a lot of logical reasons. The biggest thing that I saw with DeepSeek was that DeepSeek was able to ingest the Mandarin and render faithfully a decent, but not perfect, translation. But what DeepSeek couldn't do was DeepSeek couldn't ingest large volumes of data at one time. So I would take this script and I would plug it into DeepSeek, and I had to play around with DeepSeek quite a bit until I finally realized that what I needed to do was break my original manuscript from 130 pages down into approximately 300 individual chunks that then got loaded up into DeepSeek and then put back into an English version of the manuscript. What I learned for this were several things. One, start with a mission and know what you want to do. Be real clear about it and be real faithful to it the whole way through. 2, garbage in is garbage out. If you don't have really good input, it's still going to end up being mediocre output. And 3, ChatGPT really relies on the user to ask the best questions. Sometimes I would put a manuscript in Mandarin, and if I didn't like what I would read it, and if I didn't like what it would come up with, I'd ask it to improve it, and it would. Now, that's ended up being work that my proofreader wanted to do herself. So rather than put a lot of time into ChatGPT doing it, I had the proofreader do that work. But that is a stylistic and an artistic decision that we made together. So the real questions are still questions of how you run a business. And ChatGPT is a good tool. DeepSeek is an equally good tool. Apple Artificial Intelligence is also a good tool. But they are just tools, and you own the result. If you want to do text, make sure you ruthlessly edit the text. If you want to do audio, make sure you ruthlessly edit the audio, because you own the result. You want to make sure that that result has your handprint on it. Or what you'll get is something that lacks emotion, lacks nuance, and lacks really, truly good approximations of register or tone, and the result could still be a train wreck, even though artificial intelligence was a really good tool to get you 80% down the road. So remember, it's a tool. Don't rely on it, and don't expect it to give you 100% perfection out of the gate.